try to keep it to about 3 minutes. Number two is I will try to wrap this up no later than 7:45. We say we'll go to 8, but I like to have a few minutes to let you visit amongst yourselves and with anybody who's on the commission. And also just to say that I think it's important to understand we are not here to tell you anything. We hopefully are here for us to listen to suggestions from the citizens about what they'd like to see happen. And you're going to hear a little bit more about the city charter and how it operates for the community. I would like to take a second, if there are some charter commission members here, that they would stand and just introduce themselves, let you know who appointed them and what area they are representing. You can start with David Johnson.
David Johnson, SOBO, and I was appointed by Brian Hammond, City Council. Glad to have you tonight. Appreciate you coming, and we look forward to hearing some of your thoughts.
Sandra Warhart, and I was appointed by Councilman Williams.
Lee Jeter, Southbow, Savannah Place, I was appointed by Mayor Chandler.
All right. First thing I'd like to do is I'm a good Southern boy. I'd like to start by offering a word of prayer as we come together tonight, and ask if Reverend Jeter, if you would mind leading us in a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for our strength and help. We thank you for the opportunity, Father God, to visit with our citizens, our fellow citizens, Father, to gather input from them about their city, Father God. We ask that everything we do be decent and in order, Father God. And we're not here to serve ourselves, Father God, but we're here to serve you and to serve our citizens by serving you. We ask for your blessings on everything that we do, Father God. And we ask you this in the mighty and powerful name of our Lord and our Savior, Christ Jesus, we ask receive. Amen.
Amen.
David, I'd ask if you lead us.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I would tell you that I was appointed by Councilman Chris Smith, who a lot of people think he's the South Bossier councilman, but he reminds us that he is a councilman at large, and so he represents all of the cities. So if you have issues that your individual city councilman, we found that out at our meeting the other night, wasn't getting a response, please feel free to call Councilman Chris Smith. And I think we've even got a handout tonight that gives you numbers for all the city council and their email addresses. And again, what I'd like to do is ask if Mr. Jeter would kind of give you a little bit of a background and the ground rules that we hope to follow as we go through our town hall meeting tonight.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and again, we thank you for coming out. Anytime there's a town hall meeting or anything where the citizens provide input, we appreciate you coming out because your input is valuable. What we're here to do, and we've been tasked with the responsibility of reviewing the city charter, to review the city charter for any updates or revisions that need to be made. What the city charter is the city charter is the government document, sort of like the Constitution, for how our government, our city government is set up. It allows the structure and the way it is supposed to be run. And so therefore, as we review the city charter, and if you have recommendations and changes that you think need to be made to our city government, what we would ask you to do is, if you don't have a copy of the city charter, we have copies for you. And if you don't have some suggestions or changes tonight, and you want to take a copy and review it, there are several ways you can get that information to us. You can email us at charter@bossiercity.gov, charter@bossiercity.gov. You also may scan. We got some QR codes where you can scan the information and you can submit on a Google Doc form changes or recommendations and things that you think we need to look at on the city charter. You know, all of these are available to you. The city charter is your government document for your city government. And that's important because some individuals have never looked at it. And the last charter was written in 2005. So we're in 2024 right now. So this charter is over 20 years old. There's been a lot of changes in technology, a lot of changes in other things that we may have to update in our city charter. What we're not looking for is dramatic and punctuation. Those things are gonna take care of themselves. What we're looking for, the input from the citizens is about the substance of how your city government is run. Now, you may have some questions about particular issues in the charter on this afternoon. We may not be able to answer those questions, but we will listen to your suggestions. We're gonna write down some of the things that you're saying that you'd like us to consider. And once we get to that section of the city charter, then we're gonna take those things in consideration. The way this process is worked is the city charter is convened. We were convened on the 13th of December when the resolution was signed by the city council. It took effect 10 days after that. And the charter says we have 18 months to review it. It is not an 18-month process. If nothing has done in 18 months, then we're disbanded according to the resolution and nothing happens. So our task is to try to review this charter and get something submitted to the council in advance so that they can get it on the ballot, because the citizens of Bossier will have to vote on the charter. When it comes time to vote on the charter, you're voting up or down. You're accepting all of the changes that are being recommended on the city charter if it comes up for a vote, or you're accepting none of the changes. The ballot may be something like this, and I can't tell you the exact language. It may be, do you accept the proposed changes to the Bossier City Charter, yes or no? But prior to that, the revisions to the city charter and the copy of the proposed changes are going to be published in several forms. They'll be published in the Bossier Press Tribune. I believe they will also be made available through the city website. But we're going to encourage that the city make those changes available to every citizen so that when you go to the ballot box to vote on those things, you're educated about those things. So that's what our purpose of being here. And I think we've already went over some of the ground rules. You know, there's some issues that have already been brought to us in some of the other town halls, some of the other public meetings that we've had. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to continue to beat those issues to death. They're important, but if they've already been brought to our attention and we know there's something looking at, we want to give those citizens that may have other issues that have not been brought to the public to bring those issues so that we can address those issues in the city charter. This is your constitution that runs your city, that you're paying tax dollars to be run by. And our job is to make sure that we put a document before the people that is going to be fluid and that's going to be strong enough that it's not going to be changed at the whim of whoever's in office at that particular time, if I make myself clear. So if you have any questions, then I'll take them at this time. Otherwise, I'll have my seat and turn it back over to our chair. Okay, thank you for referring.
A couple quick comments about how this process will work, because I think that's important for you. I've already heard, trust me, from citizens across my whole area who said to me, Preston, this is such a waste of time. Nothing is going to happen. Well, I would tell you the very first charter commission, that's exactly what happened. They were appointed, 18 months passed, they had no recommendations, and nothing happened. The second thing that happened is, I'm sure some of you have heard the terminology of poison pill. Whatever motivated the Charter Commission that brought forth some recommendations, they just happened to implant in it that there would be a 10% water and sewage height every year for the period of the charter. I don't need to tell you that if we voted on that tonight, it would not be very popular. So believe it or not, that recommendation failed. Whatever we recommend to the city council, it's important to understand, they cannot change it. They cannot modify it. The mayor cannot change it, and the mayor cannot modify it. So whatever, if we were to recommend, and I know Colonel Crockett's here tonight, but if we were to recommend term limits for terms of 2 terms or 3 terms, whatever we wanted, whatever we recommended, that is what the citizens are going to vote on, okay? And I know that we've got some talkers in the room tonight, myself included, but I'm going to watch Colonel Crockett, kick him a couple times if I have to, because my dad was a sergeant. He knew how to handle these colonels. And but I would tell you that With us tonight, Lewis Johnson, if you'll raise your hand. Lewis is representing the mayor's office. He can help us. If we have any questions that we can go right back. He doesn't look like Tommy Chandler.
And also has Carol Anderson as well.
I'm just here to listen.
But the mayor's office has sent representatives, so they're here, they're listening, and all that will go back, and I promise you, they were here. If we have questions that come up regarding city council issues, which they did the other night, that had nothing to do with the charter. I think Ms. Fisher brought up some really good points that we talked about at the last meeting about continuity of government and changing and some other issues so things don't fall through the cracks. One of our city councilmen at large members, I think he's in the back of the room, Chris Smith. Chris, you want to stand up?
Hi, Chris.
Hey. Chris has come to all of our meetings and I appreciate him doing that. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to ask that someone other than any of our charter commission members, Mr. Colonel Crockett, Lewis, and Chris, if anybody else would like to hear from you on suggestions or things that you'd like to see addressed in the city charter.
It's not a suggestion, it's just I've heard some people who are much more informed than I am. How you gave us this document, how do we know even what questions to ask? How do we know what is not being followed? My idea is, why have a new charter if we're not following the old charter?
Yeah. That's a good thing, and I think that's one of the issues that will be talked about among commission members, because I think what we've heard already is there's a couple sections in the city charter, and I think some of the commissioners might want to address it, in which it says we're supposed to be doing this, and the city council has just totally done the opposite, and gone out and done their own thing.
The charter, I'm sorry.
President, can we just be a little more formal, name, address?
Oh, it would be helpful, yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry. If you give
Okay.
me a name and address,
Okay.
so we can keep that for the record. Our secretary is kind of keeping minutes.
Okay, my name is Donna Grimaldi, Grimaldi, and my husband and I live at 210 Antietam Drive, Antietam Drive, and that's in Gardens of Southgate.
That's exactly where you at.
Yeah.
The charter is over 20 years old.
Okay.
Things change. And sometimes in order to get some things done, sometimes our city will make ordinances or resolutions to institute a policy or procedure that may be going against what's actually written in the charter. Now, what happens, and most of the time, they'll pass those ordinances, they're one or two read ordinances, but a lot of the citizens may not be aware of those ordinances. And I'll use one right now that's an example. For example, the charter says the mayor should appoint a city engineer. Okay, we do not currently have a city engineer. We have a company that's representing the city as the city engineer, and the individual that works for that company is acting in that capacity. Now, that happened by ordinance and not a change to the charter. So that's one example of how some things get done. But the only way as a citizen you're gonna know these things is that you're following the council on a regular basis, you're going to council meetings, even though they may be putting them in the Bossier Press Tribune, which is the official journal for the city of Bossier. How many of you get the Bossier Press Tribune? And if you're, and I just happen to be one to get it because that's one way I keep up with the police, jury, the school board, and the other things for the many meetings I cannot attend. But the writing is so small,
Yeah.
you can't see it. But also, the city has a Facebook page, and I'm gonna give you that information. And I would encourage you also to like and to follow the city Facebook page, because the public information officer, which is Mr. Johnson, that's his role. He's putting out information on social media, and especially during times of national city emergency or city disaster, that may be one of the ways some of you may get that information, because not everybody's watching the news, not everybody's listening to other media. So the Facebook page is, and it's spelled out, Bossier City, Louisiana. And if you go to that Facebook page, you're gonna see the emblem for the city of Bossier, and you'll know you're at that page. That's another way you can find out information. But there's also a way, because you know you can communicate on Facebook. There's also another way you can communicate with Facebook. And one of the things that came out of the last town hall section, and I think the council members that was present, is that our council may not be having enough town hall meetings, so you may be disconnected from what's going on with your city. Doesn't mean whatever document that we produce is not gonna be subject to change. It came up at the last meeting that maybe we need to have a charter review committee every so many years in order to review what is in the charter, because our government is changing, our city's changing, technology is changing, and sometimes the document does not keep up with those changes, but our city government still has to run, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Right, and you know that happens in the legislature, because if you know, almost every year we vote on changes to our constitution. So it's just a constant, and all those changes would have to go to the voting people. Just remind you.
Okay, Bossier City, Louisiana, is Louisiana spelled out or? is it
Yes, ma'am, it's spelled out.
Everything's spelled out, okay.
Everything is spelled out.
Thank you.
Someone else, comments? Just don't feel shy. Y'all can't be that shy.
Preston, we have online,
Okay.
Cliff Smith. I
Okay?
don't know if Cliff Smith, you want me to read yours, or would you
Sure.
like to comment? Okay, Cliff Smith is 1612 Success Street, Bossier City. He is District 3, Mr. Williams. He says term limits with a maximum of 2 terms, retroactive, section 3.01.
Okay, and I think that's something that, Mr. Crockett, can you answer the question about the fact that I know we're looking at term limits, but I heard you say the other night that with the petition, new petition you're coming forward, that it could actually happen before we finish our commission work.
I'm Dave Crockett, 653 New Manor Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. But anyway, so y'all, most people are aware of our petition. It's really for 3 years. We're gonna try to get it done before the Charter Commission. Now, it is for 3 terms instead of 2, and I agree with you that 2 terms would be better. But a lot of the councilmen, like Chris Smith, will tell you it takes a while to learn your job, so it's not a bad thing. So what I'm recommending on the term limits issue is that they try, because we don't want to compete with them, and so I'm hoping that they will put our term limits petition words in their charter recommendation just the way that we've written them, so we won't compete. That's not to say, Cliff, that later on, somebody may say, well, that's too long, let's reduce it to 2 years in the next charter commission, and I like the other idea about doing a charter commission. So that's what it says. So we're gonna try to get it done before, so it's gonna have to be on the ballot. If it's on the ballot twice, and it's approved twice, it could be in conflict on the same ballot. That's why I'm hoping that they'll do it the same way that we're doing it. So that's what I would like to say about that, but if anybody's got any questions about term limits, you can get a hold of me, and most of you know.
Why is it on the November ballot?
Pardon me?
Why isn't it on the November ballot?
Well, I can,
You answer yours first.
the reason is that even to do the term limits petition, the November ballot has a very, very far lead time because it's a national election, and we wouldn't be able to get it done in time and get it through the council and approved and on the November ballot. It'll probably go on the December ballot, so that's an answer to that.
December this year.
December this year is our goal. It's a lot shorter timeline to get it on there, so if they get their work done, they could potentially
Right.
get this
But
done and be
the
on.
timeline that Colonel Crockett's talking about, and just to give you an idea, is the end of February. So you can imagine, that's why they can't get the petition done, and we'd have to finish all our work by the end of February. We just started our meetings, in January, so you don't get a lot of turnaround time for that. So if something were to happen, I think term limits would go before the voters in December. I think that's this year, was something that he's
So
looking
it'll
at.
affect this
And I think
election.
that there's an issue of 2 terms and 3 terms, Cliff.
Yeah,
Well, I know you mentioned 2 terms. Go ahead, let you.
No.
I was gonna say, Frisco, Texas is an example where they got themselves a nice young mayor. He's doing a great job. He got in there, he started making things happen, and guess what? He's term limited. So they put forth a ballot to go to 3 terms to try to see if they could keep him in there for 4 more years. So 12 years is sort of a good time for somebody to do the job and then move on, I think, that works out.
Preston, we have another
Okay.
form filled out. This is from Ronald J. Cheatham, 1923 Rossi Lee Drive, 71112.
Yeah, look,
You want me
it's
to read
Cheatham.
yours? It's short and sweet. It's District 1, Mr. Hammonds, and he says term limits.
Term limits, okay. I think we've had that come up at pretty much every meeting, Lee.
Mr. Chairman, and I could just piggyback for a moment to address the young man's the question about why is it not gonna be on the November ballot? In order for us to have our work done to be able to get it on the November ballot, we would actually have to have an application in and everything submitted to the council and be approved by the council. Once we submit something to council, they have to accept it. But every election must go before a bond commission. And in order to get anything on the ballot for the November 5th election, it's gotta be to the bond commission by April the 17th. So that does not give us a lot of time. All of the elections are bonded and everything must go before the bond commission before there's approval. And that's the date. So in order to get it on the next ballot after that, I believe the December ballot, we have until August the 20th to have everything done and submitted to the bond commission. And if it's done for that day, then it would be on the runoff ballot after the presidential primary, and that election is scheduled for December the 7th.
Right, Chris, I think you might mention something to it about, even though the bond commission is April 7th, it has to go through a process to be on the city council as an ordinance, and then 2 weeks to lay over and something like that.
Yeah, the process would be two votes of the city council, so that would take right at about a month. And then per this charter, it's not effective till 17 days after that second vote. So that's a month and a half, best case scenario, that it gets through the city council process.
So hopefully I give you a good idea. Timeline is just really crunched. Other folks, please stand up, please give us your thoughts. And something I think Lee said earlier, you don't have to make your recommendations tonight. You have forms that you can submit and you can email us and you can see that we're gonna get them and review them.
So I have one more,
Yeah.
but I did not get a name. It just says Bossier resident. It's District 4, Mr. Free, and he or she says term limits for city council and mayor.
Yep.
District 4.
See a trend.
There's a trend. And there's a lot of things, one of the things I think, and I don't wanna brag on Chris Smith, but he suggested, and we just talked about one day, that, for example, that in the charter, we could put in there that 2/3 vote of the city council could make for charter changes. So if we gave that authority to the city council, you could do it where we do a charter review every 2 years, or the city council, which is what the legislature does, they decide to change it, they have to have a 2/3 vote, and then it has to go to a vote of the people. So any changes are never automatic, they have to go through that process. We have talked about creating an IT department. We also talked about bond financing and how that could be put within the charter. And there was some discussion at our last meeting about an ethics board, just helping you with a couple ideas. And one was to make sure we tied the pay to not only all our fire and policemen, but the employees to the southern average, so that there was not a fight every time within it. Another process and something that the mayor has been fighting about is we are currently under what's called a strong mayor council form of government. So technically, the mayor is supposed to be the administrator. Now, there's been talk about maybe a city manager form of government like they have in Texarkana. They have that in Sugar Land, Texas. Other processes where the manager is hired to continue to keep the continuity. The mayor comes in and votes along with the city council. But to give you the irony of it, and I know some of you watch the council meetings, if we decide to hire an assistant dog catcher, even though you think it's in the budget and it's the authority of the mayor and his department head to hire that person, that process by ordinance changed the charter and said every hire, except for fire and police, has to come before the city council. Now, if you ask city councilmen that were in there years ago, they said, well, the budget kind of got out of whack. You don't want to even know how out of whack our budget is as it relates to the debt, which is stuck a little, we're staggering what our debt is.
I'm sorry, this is to piggyback off of what yours is.
And
I
then-
do have another question, so I'd like to
That's
say
right.
my actual question, but
No, name and
my name
address.
is Cassie Rogers, 4914 General Sterling Price Place, 71112.
Okay, go just a little bit slower for me.
I can talk real fast if we need to, I can keep
It's
going.
on your form you're gonna turn in.
No, this is a different question, this was about yours, so 4914 General Sterling Price Place, 71112. My question about that is, if we have all these ordinances that contradict the charter, now that the charter commission has met, are you guys reviewing those ordinances to then implement them into the charter? Or are we just gonna leave all these ordinances out there for whoever wants to do what they wanna do? Or are we gonna make it a part of our charter?
I think we're going to look at that, and our end goal is to get something presented, make those changes, and have your ideas put in there, because if we're gonna take the time to do this charter and submit for the changes, we need it followed to the letter.
Right.
And every 2 years, if we can go back and update this if needed by the citizens, their recommendations, and not a city council saying, oh, we're gonna amend this, or we're just spinning our wheels and we know what that's like. Ms. Grimaldi, you had a good point the other day, and tonight again, that you talked about as far as some of those things go, and we definitely want to address it.
will
And
those
submit it to where it
ordinances-
is in stone, and every couple of years, we will come back, listen to citizens, come back and do some town halls, listen to the voters, listen to the taxpayers, and get a charter that's representing you and your wants, needs, and desires for the city.
So those untapped ordinances that are gonna still be there after this is said and done, will those still be valid? Or does the charter commission now say they're invalid?
Chris, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the Charter Commission doesn't have the authority to look at any current ordinances. Their charge is only this document. Any ordinances that may contradict with what is eventually adopted, or if it's not adopted, that would rely on the city attorney's office to vet and the mayor's office to litigate to get those cleared up. So this body doesn't have the authority to repeal any ordinances we have on the book. That would allow with either the city council to go through and repeal them one by one, or the
But
city.
shouldn't the ordinances now be a part of the charter since we have the review commission reviewing the charters?
So.
I may be misunderstanding what he's saying.
So what you have is so think of the city charter as the city's constitution.
Sure.
Okay? And then, and this is the document we're supposed to live by. And then you have the legislative branch, which is the city council, which has adopted ordinances that were signed by mayor, approved by city attorney, and so those then became law. If there is anything that contradicts between the ordinances and this, the only person that can change that is a city councilman, one by one can draft an ordinance to repeal something, or the city attorney's office through the mayor could litigate it and have those removed. But that's the only way ordinances can be changed. This body can't.
Well, not
change
even
it.
necessarily change, because we may have adopted them and they're good ordinances and we're keeping them. But how do they become part of the charter as they should be?
So, this is, so.
I mean, I'm just wondering here, because if the document I work off every day that
Right.
governs everything I do in my life is different from the document that someone else said I should, but this is the one.
So that's a good question, and I would say that would point back to my suggestion to the commission of allowing the council to make changes to the charter without having to go through this process. So I explained this to the group Tuesday night. If you have a 2/3 vote majority of the council to make a change to the charter, and the mayor could veto it or he could sign it, whichever he chooses, and then it ultimately goes to a vote of the people, changes could happen a lot more streamlined. So, for instance, we have decided at the city level that we need currently our IT department, which is surprisingly one of the largest departments in the city because everything runs off of computers nowadays. In 2005, when this was passed, IT wasn't a thing, right? So we have determined that we need to move IT, which is currently under the finance director, we need to make it its own department and to pay for the department head to show that, right? Well, if that was the only change that we saw was needed, it would be very expensive to go through this
Right.
process and cumbersome to go through this process to make that one change. So if that is a change that this commission chooses to make, to allow the council to make changes, as we find ordinances that may contradict, but they're good ordinances that should stay and it should be codified into the charter, then we could easily do that. We also have to remember that making changes to the charter is not something that we can take lightly as a council. Even petitions can't be taken lightly because elections have costs. If we were to run an election just in the city of Bossier with nothing else on it, you're looking at about 6 figures, about $100,000. There's a lot we can do with that money. But if we know what our timeline is, let's take now as an example, we know in January that we want to make this change to the IT department, and we have a presidential election coming in November, we know we have to get that to the bond commission by August, we know what our 2 readings looks like, we can stage that to happen coinciding with that presidential election and not cost the taxpayers any money. Doing this, we don't know how long they'll take. They may take a month.
Right.
They may take the full 18 months. We don't know. And so it really is a crapshoot on what it's gonna cost us when this process is over. And so, unfortunately, and I think that, and this is probably not gonna be the popular thing to say, but I don't think there's as many ordinances that contradict this as it's made to believe. There are some.
Right.
The hiring ordinance that we just talked about a few minutes ago, that's a clear contradiction. Whether the city engineer or the public utilities director can be appointed or can be an outside firm, that's a clear contradiction. And so those are things, but I think that sometimes we will listen to people say that there's a lot of contradictions when there's really not as many as there are. So, and I think that you have a mayor and a council who want to clean up some things that may have happened in the past. And so we're going to work with this new charter, digest it, and then make those changes.
I do have another
And then
question.
another question though.
Can I ask you a question about what you just talked about though?
Sure.
Councilman Smith, I'd like to know if you would consider, because I love that idea, but I think one of the things the commission may want to consider, and I want to hear your opinion on this, is just making certain sections modifiable by the council, because, whereas you may not want section 21, which is how you change the charter, you may not want the definition and responsibilities of the mayor and the council changed, but the rest of it, would be, I just recommend that you consider that. What do you think about that?
I'm not opposed to that. Certainly, if there is something written into the charter that it is updated more frequently than every 20 years, then I think that would be a good check on the system. Because again, while I like to think that I'm a person of high integrity, and I would not do something that is beneficial to me, I don't know who's gonna be on the city council in 20 years, and so I don't know what their integrity will be like. And so, if it's written that the charter, and I know it was brought up at the last meeting that maybe the charter should be revised every 2 years. Personally, Chris Smith's idea, that's a bad idea. I think every 5, maybe every 10 years. We don't change enough for 2 years to be necessary. By the time we learn this, we're drafting a charter commission to change it. And so you get yourself in a lot of trouble because then nobody's gonna know what this actually says.
Right.
I know every word of this because I've read it so many times, but I've now been in office for 3 years and I've had time to learn it and digest it. If I had to change this already once, I'd be lost. So I do think 5 to 10 years is a good time frame on that.
Questions? Go ahead.
Yes, I know you guys want to cover this, so, I have so many things I could talk about, but, this is the hill I'm willing to die on. So, my suggestion would be chapter 3, which would be a duty to refrain from voting. I've looked at several charters from other cities, example Baton Rouge, Monroe, New Orleans, things like that. And this is the best one that I found, that I like the way that it's worded, and it says, any member of the Metropolitan Council who shall have any personal or private interest in the adoption or passage of any ordinance, resolution, motion, or measure by the body shall refrain from voting on the same at any time, whether on final passage or otherwise. So not the first time and not the second time. Any person who shall violate above provision shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be published by a fine not exceeding $100 or imprisonment for not more than 60 days, or both a fine and imprisonment at the discretion of the court, and shall forfeit his office.
Is that in here?
No, that's what I found.
Which,
Well, I can probably find it.
okay, that's fine.
Right.
I screenshotted it when I wrote
And
it.
I think the issue
You know.
here, and we talk about why we should possibly have an ethics section or
Well, I
ethics
think that's
board.
too
is
big
that-
of a-
Well, the way they did it, it sounds like that may have been Lafayette or Baton Rouge, because they did go with a parish or metropolitan
Right.
parish-wide, council, and they can make that. The problem you have here, and we know this, some of us, is that you can prohibit somebody from having that and serving the public or getting money for something if they're on the city council with city issues. What we forget is we start counting parish government, Cypress Black Bayou, Port Commission, and the list might go on, and then you find a city councilman who somehow is doing business with every other governmental
Yeah.
entity. That's something that would look at as saying,
Sure.
is that ethically correct? Because that's sort of an issue, if you think about it, all our governmental agencies really are intertwined. And, you know, you may not believe it, but we're sitting in somebody's police jury district.
Right.
The best job in the world is to be a police juror who you represent the city limits, because you have nothing to do, except your paycheck every month that you get paid. Another question, I have somebody raise their hand.
And I wanted to reference, for the rest of the audience, what you just brought up,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cassie, because that is referenced in section 307 of the charter under general powers and duties. And the only recourse right now you have as a citizen if the council or the mayor violates this ordinance, it says in section 308D, any citizens of Bossier City, including city employees, may bring suit in a court of proper jurisdiction against the mayor and or city council member for violating the provisions of this charter. Now, that deals with the general powers and duties of the council. And some of those things is how they violated some of the ordinance. For instance, I know right now, and I think our chairman referenced at the mayor, Department of Animal Control wanted to hire a level 3 dog catcher. That has to go before the city council for approval. Well, most people that are looking for a job, they're not waiting 3 weeks to get a job. If I'm applying for a job, that means I need a job right now. I don't have time to wait on 1 reading or 2 readings or 3 readings for the council to approve someone to be a dog catcher. But the charter says neither the city council nor any of its members should in any manner dictate the appointment or removal of any city employee whom the mayor or his subordinates are empowered to appoint except as provided elsewhere in this charter. So when we rewrite sections of this charter, we've got to rewrite it in a language that is not vague. Cause, okay, well.
Right, cause
that
that
doesn't-
doesn't tell me about no voting.
Exactly,
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry that I didn't hear,
right.
because you, I don't wanna be like that, but I'm just gonna do it. Because you sell insurance and you get insurance from someone else, and hey, I will do business with you if you do business with me. When you are voting on something that has to do with that corporation or that person obtaining city funds, because they're not employed by the city, they are trying to get a job with the city in a way. The councilman who is, or if there is a councilman, let's say there, if there is a councilman who shouldn't vote on this because they do business with this company, they should refrain from voting. That is normal.
We agree with you, Dave, we think
And that,
that's.
I'm sorry, but I don't see in here where it shows that
Yes, ma'am.
specifically like we said.
Yes, ma'am.
Can
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just,
I'm
I
sorry.
wanna get this, I just
Yes, ma'am.
wanna, could you send that link that you read
I can.
to our email address? And that way we'll have it on file as a record as when we get to that section, we'll have that wording and everything.
Charter@bowlercity.org, and Mr. Chairman, Councilman Smith had his hand up in the back, you can't see him.
I just,
Ms. Rogers, I wanna make sure that you're gonna go ahead and submit all of those, the rest of your
I'm doing it
questions
right
that you had, okay?
Oh, wait, it's just the one question and I submitted it.
I got it.
Okay, I thought you had some more, but if you had some
Oh, no,
comments
it
you
was,
wanted
it was
to-
a question about a question.
Okay. Chris,
Thank you.
did you have something you wanted to say?
yeah, I just wanted to also, so it's also important to note that in the state of Louisiana, there are two different types of charter municipalities. You have pre-1974 charters and you have post-1974 charters. Post-1974 charter is what Bossier is. Pre-1974, and 1974 is the year the state constitution was adopted. That is important to note because, and I wish Mr. Ray was here because he could explain this and the commission can ask him this, but there are provisions about being a post-1974 charter that says, and again, I'm not an attorney, so don't hold me to this exactly, but we're limited on how much above state law we can, how more restrictive we can be above state law, being a post-1974 charter. And so I would urge the commission to make sure you get with Mr. Ray on the legality of making an ethics section more strict, because, and I say that because the state of Louisiana has a state ethics board that we report to. We have to do ethics training every year. And if there's something that I have a question about, I don't know, as a entrepreneur and self-employed individual, there have been times where I've called the ethics board to say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, but I'm also an elected official, can I? And I would like to believe that all the councilmen and the mayors of past and future and present do that. But if you ever do have a complaint, those complaints can be filed with the state ethics board. We do have that currently. And I don't think it's any cost for you to say, hey, to submit a complaint and say, hey, I think this is violating state ethics laws. Can you look into it? And so,
And they look into everything.
and they look into everything, and so I don't know how much above the state ethics board the charter can go being a post-74 charter.
Okay. All right, I think we've done good on that topic. And I do think that that's something that we all should look at, because I think it's something that concerns all of us. Other issues, other topics that somebody'd like to mention or just talk about and bring up, because I want to give everybody the opportunity to say anything.
Okay, Stephen Gillis, Stephen with a V. G-E-L-L-E-S.
And your address?
1820 Shady Grove.
1020?
1820 Shady Grove.
Okay?
Not as sexy as what we've been talking about, but I think animal control needs a little bit more enforcement power. I'm recommending, like some other cities, animal control be put under the auspices of the police department. There'll be a non-sworn officer that won't carry guns, But they could write citations, which is coupons to see the judge for these habitual animal control violators.
Chris, would you like to speak to that? I think that'd be something that he would have to submit to the council, with that,
What's that?
the change in with the.
The animal, suggested maybe the animal control should be shifted to the police department. So it's actually a policeman that goes out and signs
That would
it.
fall under the charter, that's nothing the
It'll
city
be an
council
animal
can
control
do.
officer.
That would be, but I would, you know, just cause you're asking my opinion, you know, the police have a lot that they have to do, and so.
But you'd have to have somebody assigned, you could deputize the animal control people who are currently out there doing that. They wouldn't carry guns, all they're allowed to do is go out and give a citation for somebody who is a habitual person of not handling their.
What is specifically, I'm just curious specifically why? We do have a lot of loose dogs that get out, people's dogs are always get, but I'm just curious. And dumps, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious. I run a rescue, so I'm curious of
I
why.
understand.
Yeah.
A lot of misconceptions, animal control is out there to take the dogs away. That is not true. Most of it is education.
I know, I work with them.
And education, it can also turn into, when you have habitual and stuff, they need some incentive. Go see the judge. Explain to the judge why you're doing this, why you're not doing that.
But there's something triggering, I mean, there's obviously an issue that's triggering this for you. I wonder what's going
Just
on.
in general, for me, observing, and I'm not 1,000%, seeing how it currently works here, but my understanding through people, they just don't have the enforcement power, and they should.
Little one.
Can I do this? Could you stand up? I know you said you're with the animal rescue. Just identify your name and address so we can keep it
I'd
on
rather
record.
not.
Well, you wanna tell us what animal rescue?
No.
No?
No, there's a reason for it, because I'm having an issue at my own personal property with a dangerous neighbor.
Okay.
So I don't wanna be public right now. And Brian Hammonds is aware of it, I've already contacted him.
Mr. Chairman?
And these officers, let's say they're not gonna be police officers.
I'm just curious.
There's something called post training, police officers standard training, they'll be non-sworn officers, won't carry a gun. But they will have the powers of arrest, if they needed to do, powers to write citations, things of that nature.
I will say, Mr. Chairman, currently, if animal control goes to a residence and they deem that a ticket is warranted, they call the Bossier City Police Department to come out. The overarching issues that we have with our animal control division can't be fixed with this charter. They've got to be fixed at the parish level, actually, because that's what's putting the strain on Bossier City's animal control. And so, because in case y'all don't know, the parish does not have animal control anymore. The city does all of it for the parish, and it's putting an astronomical strain on us that we haven't had in the past. So I would say that I would not be opposed to it moving under the police department, but the police department already helps them. But really, the issue there is putting pressure on the police jury, because that's, I think if the parish can solve their problem, the city's problems will vastly go away.
And so I don't make a misunderstanding, I'm not employed by them, I didn't want you to think that.
No.
I work with them in another aspect, they usually call on me to help with certain cases on trapping and safely capturing. I'm not employed by them, so I don't want you to think that.
No, I understand. Mr. Mo?
Okay, again, Donna Grimaldi, 210 Antietam. Just while we're talking about sprucing things up with animal control and whatnot, I'd like to see something more done with, just beautifying the city. I mean, right now, when we're coming back, I wish I knew the name of the road, but it's when you're leaving Savannah Place and you're going down this road, right before you get to the street where the, right there, almost to Barksdale Boulevard, there's these houses, and they have like 4 and 5 big cars or trucks parked in the front yard. And, some, I think that y'all may know what I'm talking about, but anyway, it's been like should be some way that there could be, property standards taking care of that, but it's just not happening, so if you could put something in the charter that would put some teeth into property standards.
I think the issue there, and it's kind of interesting because I found this out, property standards, most of us think, drive around and look the way we drive around and look. They don't. They're in an office, very nice people, but you have to call and give them a name, your name, then an address you'd like them to go out and look at. And then they would go out there. The one you're talking about, I personally was at a meeting with the city. They said they would follow up. You know what they did? 2 weeks later, everybody was moved. 2 weeks later, everybody was back. So, you know, you can,
So you know.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the location you're talking about. What's ironic about that is, if I'm not mistaken, is it happens to be a deputy sheriff. Which makes it rather ironic, but, you know, that's the situation.
Okay.
So, just ma'am, stand up and tell us your name and address.
Jessica Maddox, 3504 Holiday Place. While we're going on all this stuff, I'd like something to be put in the property standards that the homeless cannot come into our neighborhood and camp out. Yeah. Please tell us they couldn't do nothing about it.
I was thinking what we do is put it where they all went to Bel Air and camped out there, so they didn't come to my neighborhood. I guess I'm being selfish.
Can you spell your name for me, please?
Jessica, Jessica, Maddox, MADDOX.
All right, go ahead.
I'll just get another one, so when you talk about it, chapter 21, the, chapter that governs this body. Section 21.02, the appointment of the Charter Review Commission. While I think that everyone's lovely and I thank you each for volunteering your time, I do feel that it is important and only fair if each of our districts are represented, no matter what the cost. So therefore, if a city council member cannot or shall not nominate someone from their district, then they forfeit the person on the committee, and therefore it either goes, we can make it whatever, goes back to the mayor, allows the councilman at large one extra spot because they are for the entire, and they will make sure that that district is taken care of. While I do appreciate each of you, even if you weren't elected from your district, I think it's very, very important that we do that. I think that's the way that we show everyone in transparency that we are fair, that it is fair, because my needs in my neighborhood is not the same as it is on Gay Boulevard in the middle of Bossier City. My needs back here is not the same. And if someone is not representing someone from my community, I would have had a huge problem with that. I do appreciate Brian Hammonds for making sure that we are represented. But it's not, there are lots of other charters, again, that I reviewed, not in detail, and I can't recall, but there are some provisions in there where it does state it must be from their, or they lose their right to appoint someone.
Right. I think the language, and Chris, you might be able to address this, is that it said they may appoint, each city councilman
It
may.
just shall
Oh,
nominate
yeah.
one person, but it doesn't say from each district.
Right, and that's what they didn't, there are two districts, we learned the other night, Councilman Darby and I think Councilman Williams, appointed people who were not even from their district. At the meeting the other night, you should have been there, in which there were about a half a dozen young ladies, nice young ladies, who said all of them were more than willing to have been appointed on the charter commission from that councilman's district, but no one was ever contacted. So that's, that councilman should have been at that meeting, I can tell you that. So, other comments? Anybody? I don't want to, I'm not going to cut anybody off, so I want somebody else to make a comment on anything in the charter commission. And remember, even if we don't cover it tonight, you've got information to take back and send in information, and you can tell it will be recorded and put into the charter commission for us to review. More comments? Lisa Johnson, you're usually not very shy, from the Bossier Chamber of Commerce. Would you?
That was Lisa. Hey, Lisa.
Lisa snuck in on us. Lisa, would you like to add anything? I know the business community is always interested in the charter, and half the information I get on guiding me as the chairman come from my
The
good
only
friend
thing I would
Lisa.
like to add is thank you for using your voice, thank you for coming out, on behalf of the business community. What happens, within our community as a whole is very important. And so, I'm just here to listen, but appreciate y'all and thank you for exercising your right.
And bring some more good business down here, okay? We're getting better and better, aren't we?
We are getting better and
Got a
better,
couple
yes
things
ma'am.
cooking now. I know. But I would tell you, it's really important, you know, the state announced, some of you heard, sort of rumored the state was gonna close down the interstate. And the next thing you know, the businesses along the area, had some discussion
Oh, yeah.
with the DOTD and they changed their mind. So they are open to listening, and I think that our city councilmen, will listen to us if we have suggestions. So other folks that would like to make a comment, anybody at all, please. All
I
right.
could keep going so bad.
I don't wanna beat a dead horse to death, but I do wanna make sure, City Councilman Smith is here. If we adjourn a few minutes early, I know he's got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old that he needs to get back to because, he can get into trouble, he comes to these meetings. But he will stick around for a few minutes and be happy to talk to you. He is your city councilman, so don't forget that. Yes, sir? Stand up and tell us your name, address.
Neil Calhoun,
Neil Calhoun.
know that Mr. Darby.
Mr. Calhoun, I'm sorry. Repeat your address, Mr. Calhoun, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear.
And your address?
Your address.
Where do you live? Cause I just moved, what's that?
2000 Jean Street. All right, go ahead, sir.
What I was concerned about, when they appointed the individuals that was outside of our district, can that be rectified? Because we have people in our community who comes to the town meetings or concerned about the community, and we wanted someone to represent us and
Right.
speak on our behalf as well.
I would tell you no, only because that ship has sailed. But I promise you, we have some good representatives. The mayor appointed Mr. Jeter. Please talk to Mr. Jeter. He is well aware of some of the issues. We are not afraid. Our very first meeting, as you well know, was in the district at Hooter Park. So we are very aware of some of the issues. I found out that Hooter Park is just as much in favor of term limits as South Gosher is. So don't be surprised. So that was something interesting to learn. Somebody showed up at the meeting with the term limits T-shirt on at the last
May I make
meeting.
a suggestion?
Yeah.
The two people that represent the districts, they're both incredible people, and I think that if you contacted those two people, because they're supposed to be representing you, it was,
I'm one of them.
you're one of them, so she's incredible, and you see she's coming to every meeting, and the other, the lady who's the chef, what's her name?
Oh, Pandorina Sumas. No, Vicky is from Mr.
I
Manager.
think Pandarina was the
Pandorina
other
was
one.
from Mr.
Darby,
Darby,
Mr.
and I don't
Darby.
know where the Sumas lives.
But my point is, if you, because those two people represent some of the people that are here that don't feel like they're represented, I highly recommend that you contact them because they're supposed to be representing you.
Okay, do we have a list of all the people, I know we have the city council information, do we have all the names and addresses?
Isn't there an email address set up?
We've got a single email address. When you email to that
Okay.
address, it goes to every one of the commissioners.
Okay.
There are 9 of us, and there's 4 of us here tonight and 5 of us who are not here.
Yeah,
But
see that.
we have had, every commission meeting, we've had 8 or 9 members. We do have our next formal meeting on March the 4th.
Tuesday, March 4th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, at 6 o'clock at the Bossier City Council chambers. If you can't make it, it's on YouTube, and feel free to watch.
But isn't there a meeting at the Bossier Instructional
There's
Center?
another town hall
Okay,
meeting,
okay.
that's our formal meeting.
Yeah.
The next town hall meeting is going to be on Tuesday,
Yeah.
What day is that?
Thursday, the 27th, from 6 to 8 at the
No,
bid.
Tuesday, it's Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 27th.
Tuesday the 27th, it's Thursday. Tuesday the 27th at the Bossier Instructional Center, which is the building next door to Airline High School.
The same place the school board meetings are held.
Yeah, just south of the, of Airline High School.
Right, and we've heard a lot of discussion. I mean, one of the things that we know now is that I know the school board, because one of our school board members is on the charter commission, noted that at their agenda at the beginning, they have sort of community communications. So if you're a parent and you want to go to the school board, you can feel free to get up and talk about what you want to talk about. Unfortunately, because the way our charter is done and the ordinances, is that you can only speak at the city council if that issue is being addressed. If it's not, you have to go through a process of which is possible to send it to the secretary, and the secretary will try to get it on the agenda, and then you can come and talk about it. But there's no open discussion before the city council. The city council can recognize anybody, I think, and let them speak. Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say, good meeting tonight, just like the other night. There's been a lot of discussion of some potential changes that I think fall more on the city council's lap as ordinances and wouldn't necessarily fall in the charter. So I will stick around afterwards if anyone wants to speak with me, and I'd be happy to discuss those issues with you. And of course, reiterate that as an at-large member, it doesn't matter where you live in the city, I represent you, and I'm very available. My cell phone number, if you have a pen and you want to write it down, is 318-840-1504. You can call me or text me. And then my email address is smithc@bossiercity.org. And if you have something that you want to relate to the city council, feel free to email it to me, and I will make sure that it's disseminated to the right person.
Right. At the last meeting we had, there was a lady who said she drives along Airline Drive late at night, and that the little light reflectors on the center are missing, and it's hard to see it, particularly if it rains. She was very nice to sit down and talk to Chris about it, so he could address that with someone at the city or parish, wherever that was taking place at. And that's one of the problems you have, is you do have the city taking care of a certain part of the street, but when it gets to a certain area, the parish takes part of it. Hence, right down the Alpha-Teague Parkway, when you get past the Jimmy Davis Bridge, make sure your headlights are working, because it's totally dark. So those are things that need to be addressed. Other comments? David?
Chris, on the website, your phone number is listed.
Yeah,
No. That's right.
The phone number listed on the website is my city issued cell phone. I don't always have it on me. I always have my personal phone on me, so that's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Did everyone get a copy of their emails and phone numbers for the city council? Because it's crucial that you come, if you can, come to city council meetings, come to our meetings. Our next one will be Tuesday, March 4th at 6 o'clock. But if you'll utilize those emails and hold them accountable for what you want done. It's very important.
All right. Anybody else off the commission want to make a comment? City Councilman Smith said he would stick around. There's nothing that says we have to stay here.
I'm with District 1, and if they want to talk to me, I can stick around too.
She's a District 1 representative on the Charter Commission. If not,
Can I make one comment, because I was waiting till the very end, I really